control. Gravity is all that I know. She's over me. She's over me. She comes with her hypnotic dance. She holds me here with only a glance. She's over me. She's over me. Everybody, welcome to the Paranormal Portal Bedtime Stories from Beyond. This is our Sunday edition. I hope your weekend has been absolutely brilliant. It's been okay for me. I I had a lot of intentions of getting a lot of things done today, but then, life happens, and so turns out I didn't get much done. But hope you guys are doing great, and thank you so much for joining me here tonight. And I hope you all are ready because, it's time for bed. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are live and underway here on the Paranormal Portal Bedtime Stories from Beyond. I'm your host, Brent Thomas, and I'm glad you're here. Thank you so much for being here. That was my radio voice. I don't know if it even worked. In my head, it was brilliant, but you never know how that stuff actually comes out. But I am thrilled you guys are here. Tonight, I thought we would touch on some of those stories, spirit stories from the wilderness again. I had a bunch of things pulled up for that show, and we never ended up using them, which is great. I don't need to use the information that I pull up on every show. I just have it there in case we need it, but I think some of these might be good stories. So, and I do still love this topic. This is, the idea that the wild places of the world are truly untamed. They're truly things that we can't even begin to comprehend because we're just in such a limited state of vision and awareness. And when people are experiencing these things that go so far beyond the norm or the understood or the recognized, it really just rattles their cages. And I think that I believe that those things are good things, because I think you can't really grow until you really challenge your paradigm. And I don't think anything challenges a paradigm much more acutely than the paranormal, whether it's a cryptid experience, whether it's a spiritual experience, a haunting, whatever it might be, an extraterrestrial experience, etc., etc., etc. Whenever the rules that we understand and we rely on fold in on themselves and something totally unexpected happens, there has to be at least a partial awakening. Now, people may struggle, and be the guy like in the Matrix, I just want to go back and get plugged back in. People may yearn for that because there's a security in normal life. There's a security in 9 to 5 and Monday through Friday, and the weekends are for fun. And there's a comfort in that security. But I really believe that we are stuck in a rut. We are stuck in such a rut because we live in our comfort zone. I mean, the whole nature of human beings is to reshape everything around them to make it a comfort zone. We are incredibly selfish beings. And I don't mean that in a terrible condescending way, but look at, our lawns. We cut down forests to build a house, and then we make sure all the rocks and stuff is round so that we can cut down the grass so it's, really short. And, it looks pretty, and we put hard substances over the ground so that there's no unexpected bumps or anything in our pavements and our concretes, and we seem to abhor a natural state of things, and I think that it's our truth when we get back out into nature and when we reconnect with that. And I actually reached out to a person just yesterday, and I haven't heard back yet, but this is an animal communicator, a psychic animal communicator. And I'm hopefully going to see if she'll be on the show, because I think that would be amazing. And I've been followed a few documentaries on this person, and she's just brilliant. She's done some amazing things with helping people understand, animal issues around them. It can be house pets. It can be wild things like, she's from Africa and has been all over the world doing this. And she seems like such a unique and neat person. And I think her name, if I'm pronouncing it right, and I might be really brutalizing it, but her name is Anna Breitenbach or something like that. And if you get a chance, look her up, look up Animal Psychic, and check out, there's a couple of documentaries and interviews of her out there, and she is just this really gentle, unique soul. And it seems, from what I can see in these experiences and as this documentary followed her, she's doing some really incredible things that I think we probably all can do. We just have so long forgotten our connection to the natural order of things and the natural vibration or energy or whatever you want to call it. So I'm trying to get her on the show, because that to me would be a brilliant thing. And I want to ask her. I want to ask her if she's ever looked into the whole Bigfoot thing, because she's a communicator. She can reach out and talk to things, and I wonder what she's seen, or what she's experienced, or what she's heard. I think that'd be really cool. But anyway, tonight we're going to get into that. So let's see. There's a bunch of you guys here, 23 of you already. Fantastic. And thank you guys so much for being here and being a part of the shows. It always makes my heart warm and fuzzy. I have a fuzzy heart. Holy God, Julia, that's a lot of thumbs up. I'm looking up through the chat and I see Julia's hit the likes. She's got like 2 rows of thumb up emojis. So, all right. So anyway, let's get into these stories, ladies and gentlemen. And again, the phone lines are open, always on the portal, unless there's a guest. But tonight I have no guest. It's just me. So again, 720-923-0500. 720-923-0500 is the call-in number if you'd like to call in and share something of your own. I'd love to hear about it. So I'll be here waiting and watching, and I'm sure Julia will let me know. So if you do ever call in and it looks like I'm engrossed in something, just let Julia know or Diana know, because they can certainly text me and say, hey, you got a call on the board. They do that often, and it's wonderful, because they are my eyes and ears. I better put my phone in front of me, so if they do, I can see it. All right, so let's get started here. This first one is coming out of Italy, and these are kind of around the world, ladies and gentlemen, so very, very cool stories. Sorry, I'm a little froggy. I don't know what's going on. Maybe I'm catching Don's froggy. I'm not sure. I hope not. He really got his tail kicked. Oh, let me get back down in the chat so I can keep an eye on that as well, as the time may come arrive. Steve. Oh, there's new. Steve Max. Nice to meet you, Steve. Oh, thank you very much. He said he really liked the intro and break music. I appreciate that, brother. Those are things that I wrote. All of them. I only use my own music on the show because when I was first starting on YouTube, I would play songs that I liked, that I had heard, and I got a whole. I soon learned what a copyright strike is. So I decided, well, I know I can use my own music, so that's what I've always done with the show, and it works out really well. But thank you, brother. I appreciate that. All right, so let me see. Oh, hey, Don's to you too. Good to see you. She can't type. Wanted to pop into you, darling. So sweet. I love you guys. You guys are so awesome. Let me see if I can get a list, at least a partial list of who could be here. So Bella's here. Hey, Bella. I don't know if I know you or not. I think I do. I'm sorry. My personal dyslexia is names. And so if I forget your name, I'm really sorry. It's nothing personal. Trust me, I forget even my family members' names from time to time. So Julia's here. Dawn's to you too. Deb Varner's here. Diana, Gemini Moon, Haxer, Island Girl. Good to see Island Girl. That's a new one. Jim Mount. Good to see you, Jim. Lady Death is in here. Oh, good to see you, Lady. I guess Lady can text me too. I didn't know she was in tonight, but I know she's been healing, but that means a lot to see you. I'm so hoping you're feeling better. It's wonderful to have you back. I'm in here. Steve Max is in here. Taz is in here, and Zero Mind. And if I didn't mention you, it's only because the the participants thing on YouTube kind of sucks. It doesn't really give a comprehensive list. So my apologies. I see Duke's in here. He just saw that now. Lori Babineau's in here. Good to see you. And Pam Edgerton is in here. So there's still people coming in. That's wonderful. Thank you, guys. And that could be part of it, too, is if you're just coming in. But, all right. So let's get to some of these stories. So this one, again, is coming from Italy. My grandma and grandpa used to rent a house in a little mountain village for 3 months in the summertime. And I used to go there every summer since I was 5 until I was 14 with my sister, which is 7 years older than me, and my cousin, which is 3 years younger than me. I don't know. Did I read this one? This one sounds familiar already. Oh, what the hell. I'll read it again. I really liked my time there, so when I grew older, this passion for the mountains stuck with me. I'm now 26, and every summer I go hiking with my boyfriend. The trails we use to hike are sometimes very stiff, and it's just the two of us, surrounded by the mountains and the silence that covers everything. Sometimes we even camp halfway if the climb is too long. One day we were climbing a difficult one near a lake in Italy, and I finished first, so I was waiting for my boyfriend at the end of the path, and at the top of the mountain, it was absolutely beautiful there. Butterflies flew on the flowers around me, and the birds were chirping happily, and I could see the whole lake surrounded by the forest. I like to sit in the silence of the mountain and watch the stunning view of the lake and watch the animals around me and living their lives. It's really relaxing. I was sitting there on a rock, and I don't know how, but I felt like something was in the woods behind me. Behind me there was a precipice, not very deep though, and the forest would cover the end of it and all around. I stood up and tried to see if there was something down there, and that's when I saw it. I still get shivers when I think about it. Deep down there was a chamois, chamois, C-H-A-M-O-I-S, chamois or chamois, I'm not sure, but a beautiful one with long horns. I think I read this before when Don was here, and I think it's a kind of deer, as I recall. But anyway, I'll continue. I got excited because I rarely see one of these, and I was looking at him from behind, and his fur was light brown, and he had a black line that went from the neck to the tail. But something was very wrong with it, and that's when I froze. His front legs looked like they didn't end with a normal cloven hoof, but he had 3 fingers at the end of his front legs, similar to a bird claw, but not that sharp. The back legs seemed normal, and I could see it because he was walking very slowly and calmly through the vegetation. Then I noticed with great horror that his face seemed flat. There was no muzzle. I couldn't look at him directly in the face, but I couldn't see his forehead and his nose, and what should have been there just wasn't there. Thinking about it now, I really wished I had seen his face just to see how the eyes and mouth were organized. He disappeared in the pine's shadow, and I was still there, shocked, when my boyfriend finally arrived. And I told him what I saw, and he didn't believe me. He just laughed at me. I know it's not scary, and it can even be funny if you think about it, but a chamois with eagle leg and flat face. And I thought about it all the time while we were descending, and it was so weird. And at the end, I told myself that I must have dreamed it, even if I would love to know that I was the only one to have ever seen the thing. I like to think it was a deity of some kind that took the form of a chamois. I'm just assuming chamois. I'm sorry if I'm brutalizing that name. There wasn't any village in the mountain's feet, so I couldn't ask someone if someone had seen this as well. or if someone knew anything about a weird animal living in the forest. And that's the end of the story. Now, I really like stories like this because, to me, these kind of stories, they really speak to the legends that are out there of these strange, for lack of a better term, hybrids of sorts. They're like hybrids between humans and, for instance, a griffin. A griffin is part eagle, part lion. A centaur is part human, part horse, et cetera, et cetera. So these kind of speak to those kind of legendary creatures that are rumored to be out there, or they were believed to be out there, at least by our ancient ancestors. And what if they are out there, or what if something very similar to that is still out there? Or what if it's able to bridge dimensions? What if that's not a problem for some of these things, and they really didn't go anywhere? They just kind of are either here or there, depending on what they want. Now, as I was stating before, we are a creature of comfort. We are. We reshape the world to our comfort all the time. Everywhere we congregate, we decimate the natural order of things and create a human order of things. And so, we are so out of rhythm with the natural ways. Maybe there was a time when we could bridge these gaps too, and maybe that's where these legends came from, when we could walk between worlds. I don't know, and I realize that's way out there. That's really wild kind of talk and wild kind of thinking, but I tell you what, as I dive further and further down this rabbit hole of the paranormal, you run into things that are hard to put into normal terms. I mean, I desperately want all these things to fit into my human terms, to fit into my human understanding, but I'm finding out that really is not the way it works. These things can't fit into a human understanding or a human frame of mind. What they do is they stretch our human understanding, and they stretch our human frame of mind. And you run across things like, are we living in a simulation? And Neil deGrasse Tyson, Tesla, the guy Elon Musk, he talks about living in a simulation, and so does Neil deGrasse Tyson. And Neil deGrasse Tyson says he finds it incredibly hard to argue against the idea that we're not in a simulation. So if we are, anything is possible. And maybe these things are more symbolic than they are actually physical, intelligent beings. I don't know. But what does it all mean? And it's hard to say. But as I go deeper down the rabbit hole, I find that none of this is going to fit into my understanding. We may have experiences within our realm of understanding, like we might be in our home and have a ghost happen or a haunting happen. And that's inside of our experience, but it stretches our experience and it stretches our understanding. So is that the big picture? Is that why there is the paranormal? And I've been saying it for a long time, that the paranormal isn't where reality goes sideways and glitches. The paranormal is the breadcrumbs to a bigger understanding. Perhaps when we grow in understanding and knowledge and can figure out the natural order of things, maybe the paranormal then just becomes normal. So just things to think about. So when you hear stories like this, it's easy to go, oh man, whoa, somebody was hitting the sauce, must have been, hitting a fatty up on the mountain there. I mean, those kind of things are like our psychological safeguards. They're like our psychological, dummy switch where we can hit it and that just debunks it, just because we can make something funny and then we laugh instead of go, whoa, wait a minute, and thinking about it. So we end up pushing humor at things that we don't want to confront. And that's a really, really big tactic now in so many different fields. Whenever something challenges somebody else's paradigm, let's tell jokes about it. And then it becomes a joke, and then we don't have to be challenged by it anymore. So I realize I'm going all around on this topic, but I think that there's a lot to this. Who is managing our simulation? Maybe we are, Pam. Maybe we are. Maybe we are much bigger then we realize and what we are in this experience is a small fraction of our true self. Maybe that's the whole game. I don't know. Maybe we are in a rogue simulation that's gone awry, and we're trying to get ourselves back to a natural world that we once were a part of. I don't know. It's anybody's guess, but that's the curiosity, though, isn't it? Maybe it's a divine presence that's running the simulation. Maybe the fact, and maybe the term simulation is too video gamey and it seems artificial. But if you follow the religions say that some divine being created this, and it created us within this. And why did it do that? Why did it do that? Was it for entertainment? Was it for loneliness? What would a divine being need to create this for? And just to watch us struggle, but maybe it's not that. Maybe it is that. I don't know. These are all things that go through my head all the time when I'm trying to make sense of what the paranormal means. And I don't pretend that the Paranormal Portal is ever going to answer those questions. I don't know that I will ever have those answers, and I believe that I probably won't. But the curiosity is that the journey to any answer starts with a question. And if you're not asking the questions, you're not getting anywhere. So that's my 2 cents. Take it or leave it. Again, I don't proclaim to have any of these answers. I don't proclaim to be an expert on any of these things that we talk about. I am an enthusiast, but I'm also on a journey of sorts. I'm trying to figure, what does this mean? What's going on here? Do we live in magical realms and we're just blind to it because, that's all been taken from us somehow, either by ourselves or by some other being? I mean, do all these hidden worlds come back when we have true vision and we can see them all simultaneously? Because we are so locked in our 3 dimensions that we're basically blind and stupid, and I'm not trying to degrade or put down anyone or anything, but what I'm saying is that somewhere, sometime in our ancient past, people had understandings of things that now we laugh at. But then things like this come in this story, these little breadcrumbs of somebody seeing something that no longer made sense. People that are seeing Sasquatch, Bigfoot, whatever version of that you wish to discuss. Those are all those old stories again. These old legendary tales of these beings that defied imagination. So maybe it's always there, and we're the ones that phase into their reality. Maybe they're always around, So consider this. This is, I'm going kind of really philosophical tonight, but I think this is important. So say, we often attribute the fact that these things are there and then they're not to them. We often attribute that to them, that, well, they're choosing to appear and now they're choosing not to appear. They may be phased between dimensions. They may be, can disappear. They can maybe cloak. We have all these definitions for what this could be, that they're not there, but then sometimes they are. What if it's not them at all? What if they're always there, but we're not? And it has everything to do with our awareness. What if it has everything to do with our perceptions, for some reason, our abilities being totally open, and we have these experiences, and the shock of these experiences jolt us back to shutting them? What if that's what's going on? I don't know. I mean, you got to think about it, right? So think it's all possible. Next on Paranormal Portal, we're just a speck of the giant named Mukumbo. Maybe Haxer, maybe we are. But perhaps we're the problem. Maybe we're the reason Bigfoot phases, because we can't hold that focus for long. And so their reality is closing to us because our minds can't grasp it quite yet. I don't know. I'm just putting it out there, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I'm not making any suggestions. I'm not making any definitive statements. I'm just putting out thoughts. And take it or leave it. I hope I'm not putting any of you guys off that just wanted a quick ghost story and some good conversation. But this is the journey for me. This is what I want to know. This is how I'm trying to figure what the hell's going on here. opening the third eye is stupid, Barry says. I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not, Barry. I think that we probably are supposed to have it opened, but it's been closed for some reason or somehow. Well, thank you, Pam. I appreciate that. Keep going. Well, I mean, just think about it, though. We are the only common denominator in all these weird sightings. It's us. It's all kinds of different people that are very genetically and physiologically similar to each other. We're all having these weird experiences, and we're all witnessing strange things that don't make sense. But maybe those things are always there. Maybe they're never gone, but our ability to perceive them comes and goes. So... and maybe that's why we can never get a clear picture of Sasquatch, Maybe that's why, because our equipment isn't as good as it needs to be either, other than the Patterson Gimlin or a few other examples of really pretty good video for their day. But anyway, I'm just throwing that out there. You guys think about it. Oh, I did catch that out of context. I'm sorry. I didn't know, Barry. Well, maybe it is. Barry's saying, I think it's closed for a reason, probably for our sanity. And that could be. Maybe you're absolutely right, Barry. Maybe we are just too, we're not capable of handling it anymore. Like something broke in us and we're trying to gain it back. I think our ancestors were. I think your ancestors were especially. Barry's part of the First Nations, and he's... his people are really dialed into this stuff, and they have so many stories and teachings around these various beings. And I don't think that they all made them up. I really don't. I think that they perceived things and they created a narrative around it to help teach. But yeah, I think that's all very great. And you may be right. Maybe we can't handle it. But hopefully we will. Hopefully we'll be able to. Because it feels to me like we're missing a whole lot. And if you look at our world, the way we're living in it, and the way that we live in our existence, we're pretty broken. And I think we're partially because we don't know how connected we are to everything. We don't know how much a part of these many realms and many layers of existence, how much a part of that we are. So... anyway, but I appreciate you guys humoring me and letting me go on a soapbox there for a little bit. But I just don't, I keep looking for those answers. I keep looking to understand what the hell is going on. I know these all, so let's say for instance, I read maybe a couple dozen stories a night, and I've done it for, I've done everyday shows now for a few months. But I've been doing the Paranormal Portal for years. So every one of those stories are not wrong, are not lies. They're not fabrications. Some of them probably are, and I can't be sure. But I know firsthand that several of them are not, because they're my stories that I've shared with you, and I know that they're real. I don't know why they happened. I don't know what the big picture of it is, but I know that those are true. So if every story's if you compiled all the stories I've ever shared on the portal, and you removed 99% of them, if only 1% of them are true, that's still freaking incredible. And that is still demonstrating a very dynamic reality. And I think that's very, very powerful. But I think it's much more than that are true. Yes, more than 1%. But I believe in the stories that you guys send to me and that you call in and participate on the phone calls. I believe in your stories, and I know you're not just trying to get on a show for whatever reasons, whether it's attention or whatever. I believe that you're sharing these things because they had a huge impact in your life, and you want to share that with the rest of us who are equally interested in such things. But anyway, continuing on, we're going to go over to Croatia and hear what's going on over there in the forest. There was a new road going through the forest that I live by that was made last year. I walked my dogs there a few times, and I never went really far. Hold on a second. Until this time, I went all the way to the end of the road, and there was a dead end. And after the dead end, nothing but more forest. There's also a cliff / drop there, so there was no more paths I or anyone else could ever walk. I sat there on the forest floor and was giving my dogs water when I heard someone calling me. They, he or she, I couldn't quite recognize if it was male or female, were shouting my name. I wasn't quite sure if I heard it right, though, so I stood still and waited to hear if they said it again. And they did say it again. They repeated it a few more times, and now I was 100% sure that they were calling my name. I thought it was maybe someone who I know, so I shouted back, and there was no response. They just continued shouting my name over and over and over. I eventually got up and decided to return home, and I could still hear my name shouted as I was walking away. I don't know what that was, and I'm not sure if it was a person. Where were they? Because, as I already said, there was a cliff at the end of the road and not a place where people could walk. And the shouts were coming from that direction, from the forest, like someone was at the bottom of the cliff. I went down that road a couple more times after that, and nothing weird had happened. And I always feel kind of uneasy there, since that part of the forest is a bit dark as well, so I feel watched when I'm there, like all the time. Especially now, since that happened, it's like I expect something is out there just waiting on me. Wow, that would be bizarre. So you're walking out there pretty anonymously into the forest, and it seems that at least something in the forest knows your name. Wow. I wonder how you guys would handle that. I don't know how I would handle that. If I went in the forest and something started calling my name, would you go? Would you go check it out? I mean, if you were able to. In this story, the person wasn't able to because there was a cliff, but would you go? Or would you just nope right out of there? Nope, nope, nope. I don't know. I don't know if I would or not. I mean, my curiosity would be begging me to do it, but my logic would be saying, oh, hell no. No, 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 no. Because it's like I've seen that movie, I've seen that movie where they go and check out what's calling them, and it never ends up well. But you got to love Hollywood. Let's see, this one is from Washington. Okay, I missed this one. I skipped this one. It says, the other night, I had my friend Mike over, and it was around 11 when this happened at night, and Mike and I had gone outside because it was really too hot in the house, and we have a forest area in the backyard. And wait, I read this one before. Yeah. I read this one before. Never mind. I can't read this one again. It was fine. It was just he saw someone who he thought was his friend, and then it wasn't. It was his friend was somewhere else completely. So he did see a white figure, though. Cool story, but no reason to reread it. Okay, so the next one is coming from Russia, Russian Federation. This story is from 2017, so it's not really that old. It took several weeks to terminate our lease at the apartment complex where we lived, and we only returned to the flat for a brief visit to collect our belongings, as neither one of us had really provided any furniture, and that wasn't a big deal. Clothing, electronics, some decorative junk that we'd collected together to enhance the space was all we really needed. And while we fought with the apartment manager over the last month's rent, we were staying at a small hotel by the waterfront, and it was a off-season for tourists, so the prices were really reasonable. So, but still, taking their toll as the time we spent there dragged on and on. As the fall season arrived, we were invited up to the dacha, either one, it's a summer house, of my girlfriend's grandmother, and it was in a medium-sized village north of the city and easily reached by train. We both figured it would be a great escape from the stresses of the city and our prior apartment, so We accepted the invitation, and by the third week in September, we were off to Grandma's house. I'd stayed in dacha before, and they're usually pretty similar. A small wooden cabin or cottage, and often with a thatched roof, really intricately carved woodwork, and dense ancient forests sprawling all around. And Ludia's grandmother didn't have a dacha, so she had a mansion. It was obviously built in the same style, but it was 3 stories tall and had at least 15 rooms. Imagine a log cabin on steroids and with hand-carved posts and massive beveled glass windows, and you'll have some idea of that cabin. Excuse me. The first thing I noticed about Babushka, which is the grandmother, was that she loved American music. She talked about it for hours on end. Elvis, in particular, was one of her favorites. And next, that she liked to flirt with her granddaughter's boyfriend a little too much. She was grabby and spouted off weird innuendos and dirty jokes like no other 78-year-old woman I've ever met before. The first night we were there, in her home, we told her about our experiences in the apartment building, and she didn't seem at all fazed by it, nodding and smiling and agreeing with a lot of our comments. And when we had relayed most of the story, she stopped us, pausing to look deeply into the fireplace, like she was examining the flames for some kind of deeper meaning. You know, this house is haunted, she said to us. I'm not really sure what Ludia was thinking, but I was thinking, what? Why would she say that to us after what we'd been through? Babushka began to tell us a story about the weeks just before her husband had died. She had a small collapsible tray overloaded with medications necessary to keep her husband alive, and the tray was set up near the head of the bed on her side so she could quickly access them if she needed. And often before she would go to sleep, a figure would come into the room from the door, just past the foot of her bed, and stop, staring at her. And she said the figures were always children, and they wore traditional Cossack costumes, probably dating from the late 1800s. 1, 2, sometimes 3 of them would come in, standing side by side, and cautiously approach the foot of the bed, sometimes stopping and placing their hands on the top of the footboard while they stared intently at her and her husband. She would call out to them, asking what they wanted and how she could help them, but they would never respond. She said the encounter always ended the same way, with her trying to wake her ailing husband, and when she turned back to the foot of the bed, they would be gone. One night they came again, and she was so frustrated and frightened by their regular appearance that she shouted out at them, "Leave me alone! Be gone from here!" She shouted to us while she told the story, gesturing with her hands, and the tray overloaded with medications then slid away across the floor 1/2 meter and came crashing to the ground, pills and bottles flying everywhere. And that was the last time she saw the children, and her husband died less than a week later. She had several more stories as well, slowly recounting them as she took care of the fire and occasionally took a photo from amongst the many that sit on the shelves around the living room. She would point to one and explain how this relative or another relative had returned to speak to her, or how they themselves had witnessed something strange in the dark Siberian forest. She told us about her own brother, Ludia's great uncle, who had been working for the civil militia, which is the police, in the 1960s, guarding train depots. And he would come home almost nightly with strange tales of various things he would see while alone in the dark station houses. Phantoms of long-dead passengers queuing up in the line to take their tickets or move across the platform to their train. And he would hear the whistles of steam engines that hadn't run for 30 years, hear people whispering, and even said he would suddenly fall ill during his watch. And Babushka told us how he would find belongings and artifacts along the train lines: watches, eyeglasses, rings, lighters. At first he'd bring them home, but after a while of runs of bad luck, would convince him to return the items back to where he had found them. When they had finally been removed from train duty, he had sworn he would never step foot in the depot again. The stories were frightening, mysterious, and even more so the way they were told. I looked around the large living room of her Dasha with all the objects on the walls and the cupboards and dancing in the firelight with large oversized shadows, and I admit I was terrified. Throughout the 1800s, Siberia was a favored place for the Russian government to send its undesirables, such as minorities, illegitimate children, even if they did have royal blood, and vagrants. And she said once the Trans-Siberian Railroad was completed, the trains ran day and night carrying poor souls exiled to this region. Ludia interrupted her grandmother, scolding her for making up stories and trying to scare us, and her grandmother just smiled back, fluffing up her blanket and rolling her eyes. Tak malod, she said a couple of times while shaking her head. Tak malod, which means so young. It was my first real introduction to the dark, Gothic, superstitious way of thinking that most Russians in this part of the world held. Babushka then continued saying, "Be careful, and that the dead are envious of the living, and they will do almost anything they can to feel warm again." The scene was pretty surreal, but so very, very Russian. If I had grown up in this region, I probably would have been taught from an early age about how to ward against evil spirits and phantoms. I would have been told that they were all around me and that every ancient forest throughout the country was a place where they gathered. I was just about sick to my stomach when Ludia's grandmother stopped and stood up, going into the kitchen and returning with a freshly baked pumpkin stuffed with fruits and nuts. "You want some dessert?" she chuckled, as she offered us some. I wasn't very hungry, and suffice to say, I didn't sleep well that night. Strangely, though, Ludia got an excellent night's sleep. Odd what people can take comfort in. That's really cool. That's really cool. And those old folklores, I think, again, those are glimpses into an old way of thinking. You know, I'm sure that these people experienced a lot, and not to say that everything that they believed was valid and factual. I know there was, of course, lots of superstition, lots of unscientific thinking, for lack of a better term, but they weren't like stupid people back then. You know, I think we have a tendency to just kind of dismiss that and think, well, that's when people were dumb, you know. But they weren't. They were as intelligent as you and I. They just didn't have all the tools we have. But they were a strong and proud people, and they were wary not to cross the spirits because they knew better. So, cool story. I like that one. The next one is coming from Indonesia. All right. I'm not sure how this one will be written because, it might have some broken English, but I'll do my best. Let's see. Any calls? Yeah, there is no calls. Are you expecting a call, or did somebody call and hang up? I didn't see anything on my phone. But no calls. Julia, thank you. Just let me know. If somebody needs to call in or has something to share, please do. Love to hear from you. One day he will use you for a character in one of his books. Lewis is talking about something. Jim. Oh, talking to Jim. Okay. All right. So let's see what's going on in Indonesia. I and my friends were really into scary stuff like horror movies and ghost stories. And of course, we love to visit reportedly haunted places just to challenge ourselves for fun. So there is this vast pine forest areas up on a hill situated about 3-hour drive from where I live. Rumor has it that the forest is haunted, and many years ago, some poor people decided to end their lives there by jumping off a deadly steep cliff known as the bow. Or the bow, I guess, as it resembles a ship's bow. It's hard to know until it's used in context. Sorry. People who live nearby have often reported sightings of ghostly body parts scattered around the forest and frightening sounds of screaming and human-like tortured cries for help. We'd heard and known about the pine forest since we were little kids, but somehow we'd never had the guts to visit it. Until one day, we got pretty bored of visiting the other haunted places in our town, and we had never seen any ghosts at all, and the pine forest came across our minds, and we decided to give it a shot. At first, we seemed a bit reluctant, but then we all agreed that we needed something a little bit scarier to do as we're all in our early 20s. It was a foggy night and a wet night as well, and we drove our way up into the forest, and from the moment I got in the car, I felt like something was not right. I just couldn't tell what it was. But I didn't want my friends to think that I was afraid, so I showed off a little by talking about scary possibilities that might happen there in the forest. When we did finally arrive, the road that divided the forest was so dark and cold, and we parked in front of an abandoned building and made our way through the pine trees, and everybody walked so fast, and nobody even said a word. The forest was so dark and frightening. We kept walking for minutes until we finally saw the bow. And we sat down and gathered around and started telling ghost stories and scary legends related to the pine forest about those people who had died there. When my friend Bobby was telling his story, suddenly I saw quick movements in the corner of my eye. I turned around, and whatever it was already gone. And at first I thought it could be some animal wandering around in the forest, but then we heard scratching voices coming from the top of the bough, as if something was up there, dragging its body up to it. I looked up, and I could make out a vague, dark silhouette of a man standing there, looking down to us. I started shaking all over, and my friends were now all looking at me, and Bobby had seen it too, and he grabbed my shoulder tight and whispered, Who's that? I was too afraid to break the silence. Let's get out of here, Bobby said in a low tone, and we were all so scared. We got petrified, and Bobby was the first to get on his knees. We better get back to the car now, he whispered, and then started walking, and we all followed him silently. And as soon as the bow was out of sight, we started running as fast as we could. For a moment there, I thought the dark figure was coming after us. I was really afraid, and I kept praying to God while we were running, and when we finally saw our car, my friend Dickie told us that he had left the key in the forest. No. No, Dickie, no. We all started cursing him, but then we decided to break into the abandoned house and stay inside until morning, though it was dark in there. That night, none of us could sleep, and we spent the night feeling frightened in a tiny room in the house. And it was a squeeze, but we didn't care. At around 2 a.m., we heard light footsteps somewhere in the left wing of the house. We squeezed closer and tighter, holding our breath, and as the sound of the footsteps became louder and louder. I closed my eyes tightly and plugged both my ears with my index finger, and then I felt a presence in the room with us. But I kept my eyes and ears shut. I was just too afraid. I got the tingling sensation as if somebody is standing really close to me. It lasted for about 30 minutes. I could feel my friends squeezing my body from all sides, and when I finally got tired, I got my hands off my ears and embraced myself, and I kept my eyes shut still. We sat on the floor there in the dark, tiny room for 4 hours, but it felt as if we had been there for ages. At around 6 a.m., we finally got out of the house. The sky had looked a little brighter, and when the sun finally rose, we went back to the forest to get the key. And then we drove back to town as soon as we could. Nobody talked. We still couldn't believe our luck. We finally made it back home safe and sound, and until this very day, I still get goosebumps whenever I think about that terrifying night in the pine forest. I sure as hell will never go back there, even if it was the last safe place on earth. That's not really too over the top. I think there's an old saying, and it's really true, and I actually heard Wes say it when I was listening to Sasquatch Chronicles today. He said, people keep looking for Sasquatch, and he said, I just tell them, be careful what you wish for. Because he was talking about the impact that these sightings have on people, and most of the times, they're not good impacts. There are people truly suffering with very acute cases of PTSD and dealing with a whole lot of stress and depression and a lot of stuff that's going on as a result of a sighting. And, he was like, people say they want to see it, but be careful what you wish for. Well, this story is kind of an example of that. It's like they tried to find ghosts. And then, when they finally got close, maybe to seeing ghosts, they all locked up and froze. It's like, I think people think that paranormal investigating is kind of the new reality TV show. It's kind of the new thrill sport that anybody can do, and it's really not. It can be, and most of the time people will not have anything bad happen. It'll be maybe exciting and a little fun to see something different and feel that weird spooky feelings that you feel when there's a presence around. But other times it can go really sideways and it can go really bad. And, it's like I've been talking about tonight, our ancient ancestors knew not to mess with the spirits. They knew to leave that all alone. And I'm not saying that that's the answer, but I think you don't ever do things like this half-heartedly. If you're gonna make that kind of step and that kind of encourage that kind of contact, then you got to be ready for the possibility of it. I love watching paranormal shows, as you could guess. And I always wonder, and I know it's really weird to go, to be in the presence of something dark. I know what that's like. I've been there. It's a horrible feeling, and you just feel sick, and you feel like you're close to something that's incredibly sick and cold and twisted, and it's a really scary feeling. But I still have never run when I've been around that. And I haven't done a ton of investigating, and I don't mean to imply that, but I've had some personal experiences when something found me. But that's a story maybe for another time, maybe never. I don't know if I'll ever tell it, but it's a horrible thing. And it's not just a thrill. It's not a thrill sport. If there is something dark, if there is something dangerous, you're exposing yourself directly to it, or those you love, because they may not come after you, but they may follow you home, and they may decide that your child is a great target, or they may decide that your pet would be a great source of life energy, or, whatever they want or whatever they do. So, you have to be extraordinarily careful, and it's not just something to do for fun. I'm not trying to dissuade anybody either. It's just one of those things. You don't ask for an experience that you're not prepared to have. So I watch all these ghost shows, and these people go in there and they got tons of gear, and they're talking about how they're going to, they're all manning up and womaning up before they go in, and they go in and they're all running around like it's Scooby-Doo. It's like, ah! It's like, what are you doing there? What are you doing there? Oh, that just cracks me up. And, I mean, I'm not there, and I can't feel the energy they're feeling. And, perhaps they're just screamers. That's just the way they cope with these things. But, at the same time, you might want to be prepared for the possibility you might run into a ghost. All right, still no calls, so that's okay. I'm just looking because it sounded like I would be expecting one, but there is not a call. So, all right, the next one is, how long are we into this so far? We're at 53 minutes. This may be the last one tonight. This is a long one. Maybe this won't be. This one may not be, but it is from Illinois. Let's see. This one's from Minnesota, but it's much quieter, or much shorter. Let's go to Minnesota for the last one for tonight, because we're already at the 54-minute mark. So we'll go about an hour here, and I'll read you this last one. And this one is about a demon in the forest. What a way to end the show. All right, here we go. This story happened to me when I was a teenager, or happened when I was a teenager to my mom, but not to me. But I was there to see how it affected her. My mom, who was becoming Catholic at the time, saved up her money and flew to Minnesota to attend a Catholic conference. It was autumn, and the leaves in Minnesota were changing beautifully, and so on her first day there, she decided to take a little walk in the natural park next to it. The hotel concierge told her about a nearby wilderness preserve that had walking paths and instructed her how to get to it. My mom is a pretty fearless person, even when she is in unfamiliar places. And since there were plenty of other people there enjoying the park, she wasn't really worried about walking in the woods alone. And she was having a pleasant walk, but It was getting kind of dark, and she decided to head back towards her car. As she walked back, she noticed the forest suddenly become strangely silent, and she had an intense feeling of someone watching her threateningly. It was like she was being hunted. Feeling uneasy, she started to pray, and then something she could not see began breathing heavily in her right ear. She said it sounded like a gigantic beast that had been running hard and was panting. She could also hear heavy footsteps crashing through the grass and dried leaves next to her on the same side. In fact, she could even see the grass being parted right there. When she increased her speed, the unseen creature did exactly the same. The people she had seen in the park earlier had gone home by then, and reaching her car seemed to take forever. Mom got ready for bed, feeling quite shaken and tired, and when she returned to her hotel room, the next day was Sunday, so she set her alarm to wake up in time to go to Mass in the morning. And it went off at the proper time, but as she sleepily reached out to quiet it, she noticed there was a second alarm clock in the room, one she had not seen before, and this alarm clock had a different time. And according to it, she didn't need to get up for another hour. For some reason, she chose to trust it and went back to sleep. When she finally woke up, there was no sign of the mysterious second alarm clock, and she had missed morning Mass. My mom returned from Minnesota more determined than before to live as a Catholic, yet she seemed strangely altered. Her mood was troubled and solitary, and I remember her spending a great deal of her time sitting in her chair by the window, praying rosaries with a pained expression in her eyes. When I would ask her what was wrong, she wouldn't tell me. Finally, about a month after this, she confided in me that ever since her experience in Minnesota, she had been unable to pray properly. Her prayers had become jumbled with obscene images and vulgar thoughts, and it was disgusting and made her ashamed to even attempt to pray. It was explained to her by her priest that the demon from the forest had followed her home. It was assaulting her with these visions in order to stop her from praying, so that she would give up on being a Catholic. The answer was to fight through the sickening imagery and pray even more, so that's why she had been spending so much time in prayer. And eventually, it worked. The demon did finally go away. Wow. I'll tell you what. You got to be careful. Got to be careful out there, ladies and gentlemen. But that's about going to do it for tonight. Thank you guys so much for being here. You guys light up my life, to quote an old cheesy song. But I really appreciate it. So, again, I'll be back tomorrow night for more of the bedtime stories. But you guys take care. I love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other and help each other out. And find the magic in every day and remember to laugh as much as you can. I'll be back tomorrow night, guys. Take care and have a wonderful evening and an amazing Monday. Well, I'll talk to you soon. Sweet dreams.